Okay? You are Mrs. and Miss Otterburn, righty?
Wrongy. I am Mrs. Van Skyler, and I wish to be taken to my cabin immediately. Bowers will have the cabin opposite on the starboard side. The roasting afternoon sun may do wonders for those jaundiced jowls of hers.
Right away, madam. Right away. Yes, you must be Dr. Messner. Such elegant German moustaches.
I'm afraid you'd never make a detective, monsieur. The moustaches, although undeniably elegant, are Belgian. My name is Poirot. Hercule Poirot.
Ah, the famous Monsieur Poirot? I grovel in mortification. I grovel.
Look, wouldn't it just be simpler for us to give you our names and you to give us the cabins that we've booked?
Simpler? Ah, love me, yes. Unquestionably simpler. Unquestionably. Such a brilliant lack of complication. In a trice, the suffragi will conduct you all to your stateroom. Suffragi! Please start. May I suggest that you all take your last look at the city? Suffragi!
Hello and welcome to Book versus Movie. This is a podcast where we read books that have been adapted into movies and then we try to decide which we like better, the book or the movie. I am Margot P. of coloniabook.com and this is my good friend and co-host Margot D. of Book and Fit Chick.
Hi, everyone.
Well, it's very gloomy here in San Diego. We have this thing, people come here this time of year thinking it's going to be gorgeous and sunny and beautiful, but we have this thing called May gray and June gloom. And it's extremely gloomy, which is very apropos for this month because we are kicking off our first ever mysteries in May here at Book versus Movie. And we are very, very, very excited to talk about it. We've never done this before. We've covered a mystery movie every now and again from time to time, but we've never devoted an entire month. So this is going to be super fun. We are still, though, looking for suggestions. We're going to put out a new episode every week this month. So if you have ideas, a favorite movie mystery that's based on some kind of literary source, it doesn't have to be a book. It can be a short story, a novella. It could be a magazine article, like maybe if it's something like in the news that they turned into a movie mystery. We will consider it as long as it has a literary source that is easily accessible. And as long as the movie is streaming on a major platform, we'll consider it. But if you want to make suggestions, meet other listeners of this podcast, or interact with us, there's a few places where you can do that on the internet.
We do have a basic Facebook page. Be sure to like it because all the episodes are posted there first. But we're much more interactive in our Facebook group. It's a private group. You type in Book VS Movie Podcast Group and ask to join. We have a couple of posts there maintained by Thaddeus of what we've covered before, ideas and suggestions from people to cover in the future. But you also can just go there and just post your own thing and give us ideas. We love that. And we also just talk about old-time movies and pop culture and things like that there. On Twitter, Instagram, and Threads, you spell out book versus a movie. And then we have an old-timey email, book versus movie podcast. Spell all those words out at gmail.com. And if you would like some stickers, we have a stack of stickers for y'all. Just send us your address via that email, and we will drop them in the mail for you.
And if you really enjoy the show and would like to help keep us in books and movies, you can also support us on Patreon.
Yes, Patreon. You type in Book VS Movie Podcast. We have 8 years worth of shows there. We've been doing the show for 10 years now. So we're putting everything from 2021 and then previous to that up on that Patreon wall. I've put up with their recently Love Story, Being There, Benjamin Button's Arrival, Harper Valley PTA. That's a song to a movie. That was fun. And next Friday, we are dropping A Streetcar Named Desire. None of those are on the main feed. All of those are on the Patreon wall. So for all of you that support us there, thank you so very much. And if you're looking for other ways to support, if you wouldn't mind leaving us a review wherever you get your podcast, that would be amazing. Or just tell a friend about the show. We'd appreciate it.
We really do. I mean, that's the best thing is that, first of all, we're happy you're here. We love that you're joining us here. And we super love when you tell other people that you know about the show. And maybe, this month, other friends who are mystery lovers. I am so excited. I'm extremely excited. We were just saying before we got on the air, we've done Agatha Christie before.
Yes.
We talked about Murder on the Orient Express.
Right? Okay. Yes.
But that was a little while ago. And I'm trying to remember which version. Was it the Albert Finney version that we covered? Okay.
I think we maybe both. I think actually we've done both.
Did we do both?
Yeah, I think we liked. Yeah, we both liked the Kenneth Branagh. So he's had 3 versions. We will probably talk about the third one. We just didn't talk about his version of Death on the Nile. It just wasn't very good. It was from a couple of years ago, and there's a couple of actors in there that were a little like icky about. So we thought, let's stick with the 19. Let's not and call it a day. So we went with the 1978 version. I remember as a kid, my mother was an Agatha Christie freak. Watched all of her. I remember
this one.
Yeah, so I remember as a kid watching this and loving it, and this was such a delight to get back to.
So, and if you are also an Agatha Christie fan, you probably know this already, but there is, number one, an excellent book and an excellent series out right now about her life, both by one of my favorite historians ever, Lucy Worsley. The book is outstanding, and so is the series. I was just telling Margot, like, there's stuff in the book that's not in the series and vice versa.
Where is the series streaming? Where do you see it?
I got it. I paid for it. I got it on YouTube.
Oh, okay.
But it's from the BBC, I think. But, so I rented it. And it was super good. It's excellent. It's so well done. And the book is, like I say, outstanding. Let's talk about
how do we do this, Margot?
How do we start? She's Agatha Christie. And if you all don't know who Agatha Christie is, I don't know where you've been, because she is the best-selling fiction writer of all time. Not just the best-selling detective, writer, not just the best mystery writer. She is the best-selling fiction writer. It's like the Bible and Agatha Christie. And
Shakespeare.
And Shakespeare, like literally that.
Yes.
In the English language, anyway. I don't want to say... You just, like, if you read her life story or if you watch things about her life story as a young woman, this is not who you think is going to be the best-selling fiction writer of all time. She has the very kind of upper middle class sort of life. Her father dies when she's very young, very much like a lot of people in where she was living in Turkey, but it's just an amazing mind for story, it would seem.
She's extremely intelligent, interesting. She sold over 2 billion books in her lifetime. She was born Agatha Mary Clarissa Miller, a well-to-do family, very, very close to her mother, who encouraged her to be smart and be independent. She had a love of travel. She was first married to Archibald.
Was it Archie? Yeah.
Yes. They were married in 1914, and he went to serve in World War I. They came back. She started writing novels in 1920, The Mysterious Affair at Styles, which features Hercule Poirot, and she was inspired by their travels. She's one of the most traveled people. And this is back when you had to be on a ship for months if you wanted to go anywhere. This woman was into surfing.
Yeah. You weren't just popping on a plane.
You were not just popping on a plane. It took forever to get, and she loved to travel.
Really amazing.
Yeah. She loved archaeology. And they had a daughter, and their relationship became strained because he fell in love with another person. He wanted to stay at their English estate and just play golf, and she made all the money. I guess that seems like a really sweet deal, but he did fall in love with another person, and he said he wanted to break up. He wanted a divorce because he wanted to marry this woman. And then Agatha, I'm sure she doesn't want to be known this, but she's been dead for a while. But she had a nervous breakdown. She had some sort of memory.
Yeah. Her mother had also died, like right around the same time.
Yes.
That her husband comes to her and tells her that her marriage is also over. We should mention also, because it comes into play later on, that she, like many women that we've talked about of this era, she served as a nurse during World War I. And particularly of interest is that she worked in the pharmacy, where she learned a great deal about potions and poisons and medicines and the healing or lethal properties of various plants and whatnot.
You would think her husband would be a little wiser and stick with her. But she does disappear for a little bit. I was watching the movie Agatha this morning. I think it's also gray and gloomy here, and it seemed like the perfect thing. Chug some coffee and watch Dustin Hoffman try to, find her. Anyway, when she came back, she claimed she had a memory loss. Her car was crashed. Her mother dies. They were, like I said, extremely close. She loved her husband, and he was leaving her for another person, and not a person to stay still. Like she always wanted to travel. She got a car, like she bought a car for herself so she could just go away and do things. I mean, had a very independent mind. Mm-hmm. But she does marry again.
She keeps the name Christie because she by the time when she disappears and her marriage falls apart and all of that, she is already she's just starting to get her first flush of success as a lady writer. That was a very unusual thing in jazz age and Hacha and all that. And a lot of people unfortunately speculated that it was a publicity stunt. It does seem that it was genuinely like she had a lot of unresolved trauma already. And then this like cataclysmic of her mother dying. And yeah, me too. I totally get it. We think now that, or we're pretty sure she underwent, she had a lot of means, she had a lot of money and resources available to her. So she was able to get some help, some mental health help that a lot of other people probably wouldn't be able to get. Mm-hmm. But she really did a lot of therapy. She did some hypnotherapy, things that later on figure in her book. I mean, what can we say? And she does find love later on. She marries an archaeologist, as she's very interested in archaeology. He's like almost 15 years younger than she is. Yeah. They make it work and they're married for the rest of their lives. And she really is in love with him. So she does find really, a really deep love later on. And I mean, I can't even imagine. It's sort of like with Harry Potter. Like, remember when the Harry Potter books were coming out and people would line up in the bookstores because they knew, everybody would speculate like what it would be. There was a time when Agatha Christie would crank out a new novel every Christmas. And it was a Christie for Christmas. It was the publisher came up with this concept and she just like cranked them out for years and years and years. If you're just kind of reading about her, if you've never read the books, or maybe you've seen a movie or two, it's easy. Everybody's on rich people on a train and like it could be anybody who did it. And then there are some sort of formulaic things about it. But the thing about Agatha Christie, even though she has devices that she kind of revisits over and over again, and certainly it's all of the little nuances in the relationships of these different characters in her books that make them not only interesting from each other, make them distinct from each other, even though like formulaically they may seem the same, but they also make it so that you want to read her stories again and again, even after you totally know who done it. Yeah. Like, what is that? That you know how the mystery goes. And Sherlock Holmes is the only one I can think of that's sort of like that you want to go back and read it again.
Yeah, they have so many clues and they have so many, misdirections and things like that. My mother, as I said, was a huge fan, would read them over and over again. She would give them to me and say, I expect these to come back when you come back to visit. It's like me with the Stephen King novels. I read them and I know what happens. I know where the boogeyman is, but I kind of want to get scared again. I just, her output was incredible. Also considering she was somebody who was traveling all the time, like how she found the time and the discipline to do it. But she was a DBE. She lived to be 85. She very rarely gave interviews because after that whole thing where she disappeared, she thought that the media was pretty mean towards her, but she still loved writing. So
she was very guarded towards the media for the rest of her life. A dame. She's a dame.
Yeah, she's a dame.
She also, by the way, is a playwright. She only wrote the longest running play in theater history, The Mousetrap, a dramatization of Three Blind Mice, I believe. And I think Poirot is not in it. Anyway, she had many successful plays. Her work has been revisited over and over and over again on stage, on the small screen, on the big screen. Her descendants keep a pretty close grip on the material. But one of the things that's kind of characteristic of a Christie adaptation is that there will be changes. So you don't ever go into any adaptation of a Christie book thinking, or if you do, like if you think like, I've read Death on the Nile, I know what the relationships are. I know like that clue means this, and this, when she does that, that's a clue. And if I go watch the movie, that's not what I'm going to see necessarily. There's going to be other clues and other motives and other relationships that are going on, all within the same general framework. Like they don't really change like the actual murderer, generally speaking, but they do change the different dials of the story as it's going along, which makes it so exciting and fun, and yet still maintaining, if it's a good adaptation, maintaining the atmosphere and the fun dialogue. Her dialogue is so much fun. Her characters are so much fun. She's known for her backdrops. Murder on the Orient Express is this amazing, lush, luxurious, accessible to just a tiny percent of the population kind of travel experience. But we get to experience it in the pages of this book. And this is a similar situation with Death on the Nile. And we should say also, not only was she interested in archaeology and Egyptology, as it was called specifically at the time, she and her husband visited the tomb of Tutankhamun. They knew Howard Carter, who was the archaeologist who discovered the tomb. They themselves went and visited the actual tomb of King Tut.
There's a curse supposedly.
Yeah, there's a curse supposedly. That Lord Carnarvon, who paid for it, he had some kind of untimely, weird death.
Yeah.
Anyway, so she is really writing from a firsthand experience. And as someone who is so traveled and such a globetrotter, she's giving us these things, these places that most of us will never get to see in our lifetime. But we really feel like we're feeling the heat of the desert and the winds of the winds through the temple of Karnak and what's not. It's amazing. There was just, we should say at this time, when the tomb was discovered, and in general, there was they called it Egyptomania. There was this fascination in the general culture in the United States and all over the place for these new discoveries that were happening. There was an influence in fashion. There was an influence in architecture here in San Diego, not far from where I live. There's a whole little district of buildings that were built around that time, and they all have like the Eye of Horus. They all have these little Egyptian touches, the columns that look like papyrus and all that. It was just something that was everywhere. Sort of like, remember when Miami Vice was on and everything was like Miami Deco?
And you're talking about in the 1920s when they found it? Or?
I'm talking about when they found it originally, but then there was a resurgence.
Right. So that was like where my generation, I'm a couple of years older than you, but they had a King Tut exhibit. Steve Martin had a song called King Tut that was a big hit, but that was Egyptology
all over again.
I still have, my mother went to the exhibit at the Met, and she brought with her first paycheck, she bought this lion, this marble lion. I know, it's so cute. And I kept it. I have it now, but she had it at every place she went. So there was, like you said, worldwide fascination. But how do you get to Egypt then, 100 years ago? Months and months on a ship.
Even in this book, it sounds like, whoa.
She really was
not something
a traveler.
You just undertake.
No.
You just go like, let's go to Egypt.
I wonder let's bring our daughter and let's just travel around the world and like, let's go to Australia. What's that thing those people are doing in the water? It's called surfing. Oh, well, I like to learn that. Just such a curious person and a smart person, and had a good ear for dialogue and knew how to place, the hints and the clues. And like I said, the misdirections. And so that's where we have this story. It's published in 1937, and it's Hercule Poirot. When she was a nurse, there were refugees from Belgium who came to England, and she became close with these people, and that's where she got her idea for this fastidious man with an egg-shaped head and an unusual curly mustache, really loved to eat and really loved and no, don't call him French. He is not French. He's Belgian, and he's a fascinating character. I think people really love David Suchet. I think we talked about him. We talked about A Christmas.
He is bar
story
none
we
my
did.
favorite.
Yeah.
He is my favorite. I'm sorry. He's the best Poirot. He just is. There's been many famous people who have played Poirot over the years, including some of the ones you mentioned, Albert Finney, Kenneth Branagh. David Suchet is the one who played him in the television series over many years. I forget, it's like 20 years or something he plays this character. So he's the best. And he was handpicked by the Christie family to play that role.
Oh, really? Mm-hmm. He also does many of the audiobooks that feature. So that's the one I was listening to this week. Oh my gosh,
me too. You all listen. Listen. Even if you've read this book before, just get the audiobook. Just trust us. Just get it. Just get it. Just go get it right now. How amazing was that audiobook?
It's just, I listened to it twice. I was so into it.
He does every, oh, it's my dog. She's barking at the nice men who are trying to fix my house. He does every single voice. You completely forget that it's David Suchet.
Yes.
You completely immerse. And then, like, I don't know about you. I'm listening to it. I was on an airplane. I was listening to it. We meet a bunch of other people. Poirot doesn't come in till pretty far in. I'm going to go move my dog. Okay. Hold on. So I was listening to it on an airplane, and in the book we meet a lot of other characters. Poirot doesn't come; he's not there at the very, very beginning. It's a little bit before he comes in. So David Suchet is doing he's doing men, he's doing women, different accents, different ages. He's perfectly. And then when Poirot shows up, and it's David Suchet doing the Poirot voice, I was like, I literally clapped my hands. I'm not kidding. I'm on the airplane. I'm like, I was so excited. And as I was listening to it was like an 8-hour audiobook.
Yeah.
I blitzed through this thing, and I kept noticing that I was smiling like the whole time, because it's just such a delight. The story, the backdrops, the characters, and then his performance. You totally forget that it's one guy doing all of it, including the narration. It is absolutely brilliant.
It's also an argument against AI, because I think there's a lot of people that want to use AI.
Could possibly?
And they use it on YouTube a lot now, and I can totally tell the difference. And it's just not, and I got it on the Libby app, the audiobook.
I did too.
It's very easy to get. This movie is streaming everywhere. So I was really happy about that, because and people in the Facebook group are really excited about this.
It's amazing. It's so good. It's so good. We should mention. No, we'll get to that. I'll wait till we talk about the movie. So let's just hit the plot points, and we're going to spoil everything. So listen, if you've not read Death of the Nile, you don't know who done it. Just come back. You can come back later. Catch up with us later. But again, like we said before, the thing about Christie is even when you do know who did it, it's still fun to read or hear
and watch. I watched this movie twice this week.
Spoiler again. We love this book and we love this movie. I cannot wait. Okay, so let's talk about.
I get confused with the plot, to be honest with you.
Okay, it's very complicated. I will say that it is extremely complicated. I was watching a making of featurette about the movie, and even the actors in the movie were like, "Yeah, it's kind of
it's dense.
We're having a hard time keeping track, but we think we've got it." Our main character, or our central character, is this woman named Linnet Ridgeway, and Linnet Ridgeway has everything. She's a golden girl of the jazz age. She's an heiress. She has a giant manor house. She has assets all over the world, in Britain and the US. She's gorgeous, which they keep stating over and over again how beautiful she is and how gracious she is. And everybody who she encounters, and we see her like encounter the porter at this place or encounter a shop person at that place. And they're always like, oh, isn't she beautiful? Oh, she's so oh, she has everything. Oh, she has the perfect life. She has absolutely everything. And then we learn she has just gotten married. So on top of everything else, she is a newlywed, and she's married this man named Simon Doyle, who doesn't have a lot of money. And we gradually learn that Simon was engaged to Lynette's best friend, Jackie.
Mm-hmm.
Jackie, who also does not have a lot of money. Jackie had gone to her friend, Linnet, and said, hey, I'm engaged to Simon. I'm so in love, but we don't have any money. Do you think you could get him a job? And her friend says, like, well, who is this guy? Like, oh, this is awfully fast. This is awfully sudden. And she's like, oh, but Jackie says, I'm so in love. If I can't marry him, I'll die. Lynette's like, okay, calm down. Okay, I guess if he's fine, he can have a job. And Linnet hires Simon. Then Lynette and Simon get together. So Lynette steals her friend's man, breaks the girl code, steals her friend's man, marries Simon, and Jacqueline is not happy about it. And Lynette's like kind of being a jerk about it. She's like, you're going to have to just get over this.
Yeah.
This is my man now. She's not real nice about it.
No, she's self-centered, and she's, she relies on her beauty. That's her personality, basically. He goes along with it, and they're going to go on their honeymoon. So they're taking this trip down the Nile. They want Poirot. I think they hire Poirot to like tell Jackie to leave them alone, or someone hires him.
Oh, he's on this vacation. He's just there on vacation. That's going on. So they're about to embark on their honeymoon on the Nile. Then we go to America. And in New York City, we have this man named Pennington. And Pennington is the man who is in charge of Miss Ridgway's American assets. He is embezzling from her. And he has found out that she's gotten married without telling him, because there's all these things about like once she gets married, then she's in charge of her own estate and yada, yada. So he will no longer be controlling the assets when she gets married. So he's like, oh, crap, I got to get her to like sign over a power of attorney to me. He's like, well, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go to Egypt because it says here that's where she's honeymooning. I'm going to act like I didn't know that she got married. And I'll just be like, oh, hey.
It's your Uncle Andy.
It's me, your Uncle Andy. Oh, fancy meeting you here. Oh, what's this I have in my bag? Oh, some papers. Hey, you wouldn't mind signing these papers, would you? So he is also going to Egypt. And so we're like, well, he's got kind of a weird little motive for going to Egypt. Then we meet some other characters. We have a doctor, a German doctor. We have a woman who is a romance novelist named Mrs. Otterborn.
Oh,
and she's everything. She's everything that people were saying that Agatha Christie was. So Agatha Christie's taking all of the rumors about herself and she's putting them into this Mrs. Otterborn. And Mrs. Otterborn also has a daughter like Agatha Christie and is traveling with her daughter. And the daughter's sort of like an assistant, like a PA kind of thing, but also her daughter, they're on board. Then we have a woman named is she Mrs. Schuyler? And she's a wealthy American. She is traveling with her. She's like an assistant, but they're also cousins, I think. She's a cousin that's fallen on hard times, and so Schuyler has hired her on as an assistant, Bowers. So they're on. So there's these two sets of women. Then there's this guy named Ferguson. Like we don't quite know what his deal is. He seems to be a socialist of some kind. He's kind of like political, and he's there to like study the political stuff that was going on in Egypt, which there was a lot of stuff going on there at the time. Oh, and then Linnet Ridgeway, the girl who has everything. She also has a maid in tow, and we learned that the maid had wanted to marry this guy, and Linnet was like, well, let me check this out because this is who she is. She's that kind of person. Like anything that comes up, she's like, let me look into this. So she looks into it and she learns that this fiance is actually already married, does not allow her maid. I don't know how she gets to have a say in that, but she does not allow her maid to marry the guy, and the maid's very upset about it. Yeah, or quit. I mean, I don't get it, but okay. And I think that's it. I think that's everybody. And Jackie has shown up on the honeymoon cruise, and they're supposed to be like, she's like stalking them, basically.
What about Colonel Race?
Oh, Colonel Race. Okay, so Poirot is on the trip to the Nile on vacation. He's on holiday. because he likes to take these, as we said, he likes luxury, Poirot. He likes fancy food and he likes fancy trips. He runs into this guy named Colonel Race, who is I don't know if he's a police officer or he's some kind of like a detective as well.
Mm-hmm.
And they're old buddies. And he's like, Race, Colonel Race, it's you. And Poirot, it's you. And why are you here? He's like, oh, I'm also on vacation. And Poirot's like, nah, no, you're not. Why are you actually here? And Race is there because he has gotten wind from Miss Ridgway's English managers that something's up with Mr. Pennington, her American manager. Like they're suspecting that he is up to some embezzling. And so he's there to keep an eye on this Pennington because he found out that Pennington's going on an Egypt trip. And he's like, this is a little too coincidental. I'm here to see kind of what's going on. So those are all of our players. Simon, the husband, and Linnet are alarmed that Jackie is there because how does she know that they were going? How did she get the money together to come on this Egypt trip? And why is she here? And she's following them around and just spoiling their good time everywhere they go. They're in the cocktail lounge and there she is, like scowling at them. And
it's their honeymoon, by the way. Like
it's their honeymoon,
and she's following them around the pyramids. She's following them. They try to distract her and have her, take off one direction. But then she's like, oh, hi, I'm on the boat too. Let's go.
Yeah. Somehow she knows everywhere they're going to be.
Right.
And Poirot is watching all of this and he quickly picks up like, oh, I see what happened. This rich girl took her poor friend's fiance, and now the friend is mad about it. And this is not going to end well. And he kind of likes Jackie. Poirot is really interesting that he has a real sense of compassion for younger people and for women. Young love. He has a soft spot for young love. And he sees what's going on. And he goes and talks. He talks to Jackie. He tries a couple of times to talk sense into her. And like, what are you doing here? Like, this is not... You got your whole life ahead of you.
Move on.
You're smart. You're pretty. You can really have a good life. Like, why do you care about this guy? Obviously, he's not that great if he just left you for her. Simon and Linnet are so rattled by seeing Jackie everywhere that they attempt to hire Poirot because Linnet is like, well, I'm rich. Everybody has a price. Let me just, I'll just throw money at this. And Poirot's like, I am on vacation. That's not what this is about. Like, I don't have a price. Not right now. I am off the clock. Stop bothering me. But nevertheless, he is Poirot. And when he sees stuff happening, he can't help but notice things. And especially because his friend Colonel Race is there. So he's also kind of taking a little bit of an extra interest in the goings on. So one night, Poirot is uncharacteristically very sleepy. Extremely sleepy. And he's like, gosh, I just can't, I don't know what, the desert air or what? I can't keep my eyes open. I'm going to go to bed. And the thing about Poirot is that in multiple stories of his, where he's in the, where he's the sleuth, we know that he is famously a light sleeper. Murder on the Orient Express. He's jolted awake. He has to go see what's going on. It's like a thing about him. He's fussy. He's fastidious. He's very smart, and he's a light sleeper. And but he's very, very, very tired, and he goes to bed. And we kind of don't. She doesn't make a big deal about it. Like, oh, he's a little wiped. He's on vacation. He's going to bed. After he goes to bed, everybody's hanging out in the cocktail lounge. Jackie comes in. She's very drunk. She's confronting yet again. She's confronting her former friend and her former fiance. The Linnet, the friend, leaves the cocktail lounge, and Jackie pulls out a little pistol. She has this. They keep going on about how tiny it is. It's like a little lipstick pistol that she keeps in her purse. And she has shown it to Poirot earlier. She has shown it and said, I have thought about killing Linnet. I've thought about it, and I could do it because I'm a really super good shot. She makes a point of telling him that for some reason. So she's drunk. She's belligerent, and she shoots Simon in the leg. And she's instantly sorry. She instantly collapses and she's floods of tears and she can't believe that she got this far. And he's like, don't worry about it. You know, everything's fine. I get it. It's okay. I've treated you horribly. I'll be fine. Don't worry about it. He's taking it very, very well.
And it's like, and then supposedly there's a lot of blood coming out of his leg. So that's causing this big distraction because people see blood, they realize how intense something is. So we need to go and get the doctor. We need to find somebody to help him. And that, well, we'll tell you what happens there. But he's not dead, but he is now supposedly he's
seriously wounded. He's wounded beyond being able to walk.
Very
important.
Right. And so he's exactly. So people think he's pretty helpless, basically. There's also the thing that Salome Otterborn, our writer, she's always drunk and she's always like trying to get, hints and clues and wants to talk to Poirot to get ideas for new stories. But there's with Marie Schuyler and Van Schuyler, and Miss Bowers. Schuyler is a kleptomaniac. She notices that Linnet is wearing this gorgeous pearl necklace.
She's like, "Oh, those are nice pearls."
Ooh, yes. So there's a point where she's wearing these gorgeous pearls, and then the pearls just disappear, but then they come back. But then, like, Poirot could tell that they're not the real thing. Like we said, there's just so much going on.
There's a whole thing in the book. It's not in the movie at all. There's a whole thing in the book about the pearls disappear. They come back. They're found to be fake. They disappear again. Then the real ones come back. It's a whole thing. So everybody freaks out, goes and fetches the doctor, and also goes and fetches Miss Bowers, because Miss Bowers is a trained nurse as well. So they get the doctor to help Simon, who's been shot, and they get Miss Bowers to help Jackie, who is having a breakdown. And that Mrs. Bowers sedates Jackie. Mm-hmm. So she's also now unable to walk. And the doctor comes in and like, oh my gosh, you've been shot. And he's treating Simon for his leg wound. And so those two are now incapacitated. Cut to next morning, Linnet's maid goes in to check on Linnet, and Linnet is no more. She has a bullet wound through the head.
And it has smoke around it, like on the edges of the.
It's got scorch marks.
Marks around the edges. So then they're like, well, who would shoot her? Who had motive? Why would they even do this? And like the two people.
Turns out everybody.
Right. Everyone. They all want to kill each other, basically, because this is an Agatha Christie story. Then we're meant to believe that those two are harmless. They didn't do anything. But then why would people want to kill Linnet? And it turns out a lot of people did. She had a lot of money. She was ready to take down her Uncle Andrews or Uncle Andy. The maid that works for her was Louise. She was tired of her nonsense. She wants to marry, her guy, and she owes her money, like months and months of paychecks.
She owes her back pay, like a lot of back pay. She's not giving it to her.
And she's not giving it to her. She's like, no, and
no. She's not very nice.
No, she's not she's not a great person. It's a lot of, there's a point where, they're up on top of the pyramid and like a boulder comes down.
There's a previous incident and where they're sightseeing. Simon and Linnet are sightseeing, and this huge boulder comes rolling down, and I think she was napping. Anyway, there's a scene where she narrowly misses getting squashed by a boulder, and that's where they first start thinking like, oh, somebody's trying to kill this woman who has everything. But as it turns out, everybody has a motive. Everybody has a reason where their life would be better if Linnet weren't around.
Yes.
Basically. In one way or another. Even if it's just because like Ferguson, for just like political reasons. And it's very fun. There's a lot of like intrigue and running and speculating, and Poirot now there's a murder. So now Poirot's like getting his mustache together, and he's going to solve this thing. And he's going around there. They're searching the rooms. They're looking for these pearls that have gone missing, and they find that Miss Schuyler took the pearls, swapped the pearls, put them back. But did she swap the pearls before or after the murder happened? Did she murder for the pearls? Maybe. So there's a lot of this. There's a lot of speculation about every single little, and it's very fun. It's super fun. Because it's fun to think, your mind goes all kinds of places while Poirot is trying to investigate this crime. And Race is great too. It's nice when he has an ally.
Yeah, they're a good duo.
They're a good duo. I like them. So here's where we're going to spoil everything. Poirot figures out that, and this is often the case with a Christie mystery, that for all of the seeming like disorder and convolution of like so many people had a reason to kill that person, it's often the simplest answer. And it turns out, who is the simplest person? Jackie. Linnet stole her man. But Jackie was sedated at the time of the murder. So how do you explain that? Well, she had an accomplice. Who was the accomplice? Simon. Turns out they were never not in love. They decided Jackie, and there's more of this, more made about this in the book than in the movie that we're going to talk about. I guess because we sort of see it for ourselves. But that Jackie says that she was first like really hurt that her friend had taken her man, because she did legit take her man. But then Simon came to her and said like, no, actually, I really still love you. You know, I just need money. And, you know, it'd be really super convenient if suddenly my wife disappeared and then we could be together, Jackie. But Jackie says, you know, I really didn't want to do anything to hurt Linnet, but then she was such a jerk about taking my man. Screw her.
If she's
on my list
dead,
now.
her husband inherits. We're thinking he inherits something. I mean, he'll definitely
He inherits everything.
Yeah,
that's part of the terms we established for Mr. Pennington. That's why he wants her to sign over power of attorney to him before it's too late.
Right, and he's questioned Poirot and Colonel Race. But what happened is Simon took blood red nail polish, and when he was shot, she missed him. He actually fakes the injury and then puts all this red nail polish to make it look like there's all this blood gushing out, which is part of the reason they all get distracted and stuff like that. And so he wasn't injured. So when they're going out to get help for him, the 2 minutes that he has, he takes off his shoes and in his stocking feet, he goes and finds Linnet and he shoots her. And he shoots her at close range. And then Poirot is basically saying, we can check for gun residue. And that's when the jig is up. He's going to check for the gun residue. They're looking at each other like, oh boy, we didn't consider that.
Uh-oh.
Yikes. Nope. And that's where, and then that becomes, how did this all happen? How did we? And then so they, and also we should say trigger warnings. Like it's in the end, they're just
Jackie, yeah,
it's yeah. So Jackie says, Simon, we're going to go to jail, aren't we? He's kind of like, yeah, we're cooked. And so she shoots him, and then as Poirot's going to her, she then shoots herself. And that's how they leave it, because they don't want to go to jail. They're going to go out together. And that's the story. And that's, you know, standard murder mysteries. And they take those kinds of turns sometimes. It's the leading up there and meeting all these characters that's the fun part.
So let me see. It's 1, 2, 3, 4. There's 5 murders. So Linnet is the first murderer. Then the maid, I think, is murdered. Linnet's maid is murdered next, because it turns out she had seen them, Jackie and Simon,
together.
And had put 2 and 2 together and was blackmailing them to get her own money back.
Thank you. Her francs are in her hand, somebody rips it out of her hand. And so there's a little bit of that money, paper money, under her fingers.
And then, because they're all on a boat. They're not like running all over Cairo. They're all this is all happening on a boat. And then Mrs. Otterbourne sees that murder, and she's about to tell everybody, like, I've solved the case. And then she gets it. So that's 3. And then Jackie gets Simon, and then herself, that's 5. So when the boat lands at the next big city, where they can actually do something about it, where there's like a police department and whatnot, there's 5 people now missing from this not very large party to begin with. It's not a good holiday.
No, it's a lot that happens, but that's the story. It's fun, and it's
so much fun to read. It's great.
It really is. And remember, it's fiction. Like nothing is really happening here. This is just out of her imagination. So should we go to the movie now? I love this movie. Okay, we're going to take a quick break, and then we will play the trailer, and then we will get right into this movie.
Murder?
Now, join the most brilliant detective of all time
Hercule Poirot.
on a mysterious journey down the Nile to the great wonders of the world, where the biggest wonder of them all is whodunit.
I feel the presence of evil all about me.
Agatha Christie's Death on the Nile. Starring Peter Ustinov
With me, it's the exercise of the little gray cells.
and 9 star suspects. Bette Davis,
You perfectly foul French upstart.
Belgian upstart, please, mother.
Mia Farrow,
I just want to put this gun right against her head. And then ever so gently pull the trigger.
Angela Lansbury,
You see, I know all I tell you.
David Niven,
She must have known something about Linnet Doyle's murderer.
Maggie Smith,
But why should I kill Mrs. Doyle?
George Kennedy,
You can't pin that on me.
Me?
Jack Warden,
So now you think that I?
Olivia Hussey, Lois Childs in Agatha Christie's
Jockey!
Death on the Nile.
No, Poirot, the way I see it, everybody could have done it. And everybody had a reason for doing it.
Of course.
So you think you know, huh?
I know. This place is beginning to resemble a mortuary.
You see, we have been running in the wrong direction, you and I. We know almost all there is to know. Except that what we know seems incredible.
It's incredible.
Preposterous.
Outrageous!
Now, the most daring, the most deadly case of his career challenges Hercule Poirot
And it was carefully planned.
to guess who in the world done it.
But I, Hercule Poirot, have eyes which notice everything.
Mystery in first class. Murder with style. Agatha Christie's Death on the Nile.
Oh my goodness.
I think before we even do that, we need to talk about what we talked about. The first one that came out, and she was still alive, I think, when Murder on the Orient Express was made, and that was a huge success with Albert Finney, and we talked about that one a while back. And so everybody was like, "This is amazing. We want more of these Agatha Christie movies, please. They are great." Albert Finney famously did not want to do the Poirot makeup in the Egypt heat, and so he turned it down. But let's talk about like the reason why they chose to do this book. Of all of her books, why did they choose this one? Because this is not her best-selling book, and Murder on the Orient Express is not her best-selling book. Her best-selling book of all time is a book that we now know as And Then There Were None. That is not the original title. The original title you can look up for yourself. It is extremely racist. It's so racist that when it was released in the United States, her American publishers were like, "Ooh, we can't use this title. Let's use this other, also very racist." It was just as racist, but not to the American audience for a long time. And I just learned this morning that that book went by its original title in Britain into the 1980s. And I don't get it because And Then There Were None is such an awesome title. But And Then There Were None is her very most famous, most popular book of all time. It is a great book. It is a super, super good book with a very unfortunate tie-in to a super, super racist nursery rhyme. So that's where we are with that. But that's not why they didn't choose that book. They chose Death on the Nile specifically because, as we mentioned a little bit ago, this was right at the time during the blockbuster museum tour of the King Tut exhibit. King Tut exhibit was this tour. Like, if you weren't alive then, it's hard to Egyptomania all over again. It was Egypt, everything. And I remember hearing about King Tut in elementary school. Mm-hmm. It was a big deal. The tour was largely orchestrated by my former employer, the Metropolitan Museum of Art. And the Met, when they set up the tour, famously set it up so it ended at the Met. So it was like, really go out with the bang. We're going to end this at the Met. Thomas Hoving was the director of the Met. He's a whole character unto himself. So there was that Egyptomania going on, great tie-in with this movie. And so they really, they not only did they just choose it for that, but they also made the premiere of the movie coincide with the opening of the exhibit at the Met. And I think that's when they built the Temple of Dendur. Like if you go to the Met, that's the Temple of Dendur that's there. Like I think that was put there for that show. Anyway, so it's all tied in. All of this is all connected and tied together. We don't have Albert Finney. And I think she's still alive right when they're starting production of this.
Let me look it up.
I think she's still, when they started filming, because from what I heard, the documentary I watched of the making of, they're talking about her as if they had talked directly with her, as opposed to like her daughter.
It takes forever to put a movie together. Yeah, it takes a long time.
It's a long time, especially like this, like you're going to Egypt and stuff.
Right. So she died January 12th, 1976. So it was probably in pre-production.
Yes. And the Albert Finney one, the Murder on the Orient Express, was what was so great about it, apart from the story and the setting and the costumes and Albert Finney, was it had this amazing cast of Hollywood stars from not just Hollywood stars, film stars, globally famous, huge stars of every era, practically, of filmmaking. They set the bar. Is what I'm saying. So you have to follow that up. You can't just throw a bunch of people from England, let's say, or from just the United States, from Hollywood, and just have it be that. We got to go big here. And I mean, so it's Peter Ustinov as Poirot. He's great. I think he plays it for laughs. He's a delight.
Lois Chiles as Linnet. How gorgeous is this woman? Oh my God.
She's a Bond girl. If you remember Moonraker, she's in Moonraker. She is perfect. She's that, like, that's exactly what I always have in my mind reading this book. Like, again, she's the girl who has everything, the golden girl. She is beautiful. She's riding on horseback.
Yes.
With Simon. She looks like a shampoo commercial. She looks like, it's amazing. She's so pretty.
And then Mia Farrow, who's great in this movie.
Oh.
And when people keep talking about how her son Ronan looks like Frank Sinatra, I'm like, no, he looks like his mother. Like
he really looks like her.
I mean, there could be twins when you see this with the red hair and the pale skin. Mm-hmm. Simon McCorkindale, and I can't remember what he was from. He's so cute.
I remember him from I, Claudius, which I'm a huge fan of. He plays one of the possible successors to the Emperor Augustus who gets bumped off. He's like Augustus's grandson or nephew or something like that. So he's quite dashing.
Oh, he's so handsome. Yeah. He's perfect.
He's a good actor too.
Yeah. David Niven is Colonel Race. I mean,
perfect.
Niven.
Perfect.
And then we get Bette Davis is Mrs. Van Skyler. And Maggie Smith is Miss Bowers.
Stop it.
Their interactions, so funny, so barbed. If you're missing Downton Abbey, like, this is your fix. Like, you could get it right here.
There's a clock. Use your eyes.
Didn't your mother ever tell you, as far as servants are concerned, there is a vast difference between amiable eccentricity and downright rudeness?
My mother was a lady.
A disposition she failed to pass on to you.
It's your bedtime.
They should have been
a team. I want a
whole
movie with just them.
Just them traveling.
Just these two characters. And
trading quips. Trading quips. And going on a road.
The way that Maggie Smith is manhandling Bette Davis throughout this movie is so hilarious. It's so funny. Like, both of them. I mean, we've talked about both of them, and we love Maggie Smith and we love Bette Davis, and they're both not only such brilliant character actors themselves, but they're also very good physical comedians, and they both are really very physical in this movie, and it is hilarious.
fabulous, isn't it?
You're the Ridgeway girl, aren't you?
And you're Mrs. Van Schuyler. I wondered if we'd ever break the ice.
Well, I seldom talk to strangers, but never to strange honeymooners.
I'm glad you're breaking your rule.
Well, rules are made to be broken. At least mine are, by me. Oh, they're beautiful.
Thank you.
And amazing, if you know how they're made. A tiny piece of grit makes its way into an oyster, which eventually becomes a pearl of great price hanging round the neck of a pretty girl like you.
I never thought of it that way.
Well, you should. The oyster nearly dies.
Come along now, back to the cabin. Time for your massage.
My companion Bowers. She did 15 rounds once with Jack Dempsey. He was never the same man again.
Sorry, Miss Ridgeway.
Mrs. Doyle.
Mrs. Simon Doyle.
You have got to forgive Miss Bowers. She's just unfamiliar with the married state.
I saw you drooling over her pearls.
Shut up, Bowers.
You'd give every tooth in your head to lay your hands on them.
What nonsense, just because you've got a grudge against her, or rather her father. No need to be uncivil.
Grudge? Malouish Ridgeway ruined my family.
Well, you should be grateful. If he hadn't, you'd have missed the pleasure of working for me.
Could kill her on that score alone.
I could watch them all day long.
It's like I said, Angela Lansbury, Salome Otterborn, who's playing for laughs.
She's perfection.
She is a delight. She's so funny and just believable. Best
costumes in the movie. Angela Lansbury.
And then her daughter or
her daughter,
Olivia Hussey, another beautiful
Juliet. Yeah, it's Juliet.
I mean, beautiful. I mean, everybody's so good looking.
So pretty.
So beautiful. John Finch is James Ferguson. We have Jack Warden playing Dr. Ludwig Besner. He's using a German accent. He's good.
He is very good in this. But I forgot that he was in this movie.
There's
very good.
Jane Birkin. You heard about the Birkin bags, y'all?
That's her.
That's her. She was a style icon in 60s London. I mean, an international. Yes. I mean, but also gorgeous and stylish.
So pretty.
Oh,
she's playing the maid. She's Louise the maid who gets it with the little fragment of the francs in her hand.
Yes. George Kennedy as Andrew Pennington.
Perfect. It's perfect.
We do. Sam Wanamaker has a brief part in there. We should say that it's the Indian characters are a bit of a caricature.
Egyptian. They're Egyptian,
right?
But they're just kind of generally ethnic in a not really very enduring way.
Mr. Chowdhury is kind of okay. It's
a little like making fun of the accent and
it's the colonialism that's going on for so many years. But that's her cast, and they're incredible. The director is John Guillermin. He supposedly they hired him just to do the job, and he was supposed to just send the clips over. There was no screening room. He was not allowed to.
Did he make this movie?
I don't know, because that would make it a mess, you would think, and it's not. It looks beautiful. There's a whole scene where they're tangoing. They're all doing a tango.
It's so good.
Oh, it's so beautiful.
Each one in their own way with their own, like Angela Lansbury. Just try to not watch Angela Lansbury the whole time, but it's so good. He also did Towering Inferno,
which we might cover one day because that's based on a book.
Yeah, King Kong, the one with
Jessica Lange.
Yes, and Charles Grodin.
That's right. I love that movie. I found it really enjoyable.
Yeah, how on earth? Like, how did he make it in such a complicated plot, as we've said? How are you making this with not being able to watch the rushes every day? I do not know.
And that boat is not that big. Like, they managed to get that camera around and get all those scenes, and it makes sense. I don't know how he did it.
Locations,
are
amazing. They're on location in Egypt. Oh my gosh, there's this scene. They're just this scene when they first get to Egypt. So Linnet and Simon, who are newlyweds and they're in love and they only wear white, they've just arrived and they think they've escaped Jackie. and they just strolling up to the top of a pyramid. They're like, oh, here we are at the top.
My God, fantastic.
I think they're frightening.
No, they're not.
Do you think you'll sing a note for me?
Why not? You're divine.
Welcome to the Temple of Abu Simbel. The facade is 84 feet long. Each of the statues of Ramesses II is 65 feet high. Get away from me! Get away! Get away from me!
Darling, don't let her spoil everything.
Aren't we lucky?
Making out at the tippy top of a pyramid.
Right. Aren't we
and then
so
Jackie's
lucky?
like, surprise!
And it's Mia Farrow like, hey, which is fantastic.
It's super good. I really like the use of the locations is really smart. It's just enough.
The music is by Nino Rota.
It's good.
It's very good. And there are a lot of times you don't have any music bedding the scene. You're just hearing the sounds of the ship, the sounds of the location.
The water, the wind.
Right, which I think is effective too. Because sometimes it's just really quiet and then we get a murder.
Yeah. And here there's a lot of, like we said, when you adapt a Christie book, there's a lot of differences. The details are often very, 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 very different. The motives can be totally different. Like in the movie, Linnet is suing Mrs. Audubon for slander. And so, for libel. So that's her motive. But in the book, the motive, or not the motive, but in the book, Mrs. Audubon is an alcoholic and the daughter is desperate, even though everybody knows the daughter is desperate to keep her mother's alcoholism a secret. And she does marry, and the daughter ends up marrying Ferguson, but it's like under a totally different kind of set of circumstances. So yeah, there's a lot of different details. But the general, the murderers are still the same murderers, and the kind of way that they do it is pretty much the same. There's, like I said, little tweaks in the details, just enough, like if you've read this book a zillion times, that you're going to be intrigued and surprised. Still, like, I think the dialogue is very good. But the costumes and like the whole art direction of it, like one of the things I think is really cool about this movie, especially like at this point in the 70s where there is this nostalgia for that era. They could have gone super over the top with the costumes and the settings and the ballroom of the resort and whatnot. But they keep the palette is very neutral. So like we said, like Linnet and Simon are always wearing white. She has one time where she's wearing like a silver gown. Once they get to Egypt, like all the color palette is very, very neutral. So then when Simon is shot, that's the first gunshot that we see. When Simon is shot, that blood is very jarring. Like it's super, your eye goes right to it. You're not dazzled by, the Egyptian motifs of this and that, turquoise and gold, kind of like you would think there would be. It's quite neutral, so that when the killing starts happening, it's very jarring, visually very, very jarring. Even though we later learn it's red ink. Not blood. But when you see it and when it is genuinely blood, it looks the same. So you, the viewer, are unaware of the swapsies that are going on. So good. Everybody's so good.
Everyone. I mean, I would say like Farrow and Simon McCorkindale are great together too. They're very believable. The plot is kind of ludicrous, but That's what's fun about it. Like it's just so over the top, and and I appreciate it too. Like they could have gone so much more broad with the costuming and the art direction, and it just feels very spot on. It feels just like it's that time. It's the 20s, and that we're there. And
I love. Okay, so Poirot, if you've read the books, if you watch the David Suchet, she goes to great lengths always to describe what Poirot looks like. And his trademark is he has the little very precisely twirled mustache, but he's also quite a small in stature man who is bald. And that is his look. And that's not Peter Ustinov. Peter Ustinov is kind of a big guy, and he's got very luxurious hair. He kind of always has. We talked about him when we talked Logan's Run.
Oh my gosh,
remember?
Yes.
I love Peter Ustinov in every. I just think he's so smart and he's always so fun to watch. And yet, even though he's very physically different from Poirot, Poirot is very specific and very established. And it's not Peter Ustinov, but somehow he manages to really embody that character because he's so brilliant. Really, really embody that character. And he has all of Poirot's characteristics. He just doesn't look exactly the way he's been described in the books. And there's this wonderful point where he's asleep and he has a hairnet on his luxuriously curled hair. Like he's always fussing with his curly hair. And then he has an extra little hairnet on his mustache. It's so cute.
He's just constantly eating. And so so he goes to see Simon McCorkindale, he thinks he's been shot. And they bring his lunch. He needs to eat his lunch because, I can't eat anything. And Poirot's like, I'll don't mind me. It just takes and starts eating off the tray.
Consider what had actually been seen. Mademoiselle Rosalie saw Jacqueline fire her pistol. She saw Doyle collapse to the floor, and then turning away to seek help, she ran into Monsieur Ferguson, who had heard the shot. All he saw was Doyle clutching a red-stained handkerchief to his leg. He quite naturally assumed that Doyle had been shot, but the assumption was wrong. The bullet had not gone into Doyle, but elsewhere. And now what happens? Doyle insists that Jackie be taken away to her cabin and not be left alone. And so Jackie is helped to her cabin by Mademoiselle Rosalie and Monsieur Ferguson. Then Mademoiselle Rosalie goes to fetch Miss Bowers. And accordingly, all the activity is centered on the starboard side of the boat.
Bowers!
2 minutes are all that Doyle needs. He takes off his shoes, picks up the gun from under the sofa, where Jackie had thoughtfully thrown it so that it would be forgotten until later, and runs like a hare along the port deck. He then enters his wife's cabin.
He's like, they have this sediment in my wine, but that's the sign of a fine wine. And it's Colonel Race is like, oh, no, I don't think so. And they've been poisoning him. That's to make him right. So,
to make him sleep.
Because
they know he's smart enough that he would pick up on all the clues, but not everybody else would. And Simon, and I love too, this is true in the book and in the movie, and we haven't talked about this, that Simon and Jackie are in cahoots. They are the murderer. But it's Jackie, because Simon is kind of dumb.
He's supposed to be dumb.
He's a little dim. He's super cute. But
you wouldn't play chess with him.
No. So all of the slip ups are really kind of his slip ups. But yeah, so I like that she is the mastermind. And yet, and Poirot is fully aware of this, and yet he feels sorry for her. He has kind of a soft spot for her.
It's Mia Farrow.
It's Mia Farrow.
Right? I mean, yeah. It's really well done. Like I said, I watched it twice this week. I'll watch it again.
So good. The cost, I mean, everything.
Everything.
Great performances. Really not a bad one in the bunch. Everybody is so, so good. I just buy all of it. And yeah, I want a movie with just Angela Lansbury and Olivia Hussey.
Yep.
And I want a movie with just Bette Davis and Maggie Smith. That is just, seriously, I could just watch those scenes all day.
You could feel like they're having fun too. Like how much would you have liked?
You could tell.
How much would you have liked to have been on that set and just hang out with them in between, like when they're doing setups, when they're just talking about the movies they've been in, and
I think they said in the documentary that those ladies roomed together.
Yeah,
on set. So they seem to be having the time of their lives. So they really seem like they're having a great time. It's so good. It's so much fun. I forgot how good it was. Like, I remembered that I liked it, and I remembered that I liked Peter Ustinov. Mm-hmm. It's super, super good. Still like David Suchet better.
You know, a lot of people feel that way. And we have that episode, like I said, it was a Christmas themed one, and it's one of our top downloaded episodes. Like, he has fans all over the world.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I enjoy Peter Ustinov's Poirot more than I enjoyed Albert Finney's. Albert Finney's was a little, not as much fun.
Right.
I don't remember, is Poirot on vacation in Orient Express? I can't remember if he's working or if he's on vacation. Because in this one he's on vacation, so like, okay,
yeah,
he's letting his hair down a little bit, if you will. So maybe it's that. But I really enjoy his Poirot. I think it's so good, and he plays him again. Evil Under the Sun. That's what it is.
Okay.
Yes, Evil Under the Sun. He plays Poirot again in 1982. So yeah, he's a great choice. A great choice. Love it. I mean, so much fun. But
I can't pick between them.
I can't either. I think they both. Yeah, I can't say that I like the book better than the movie. I like the choices that they made for the movie. I like. I think I felt like they were the right choices. They're more as sometimes happens. I don't know why this seems to be necessary, but it kind of does. That in the movie you kind of have to have higher stakes. So the motives of the various characters in the movie are kind of turned up compared to what they are in the book. So I like that. I like those choices. I'm gonna say tie.
It's a tie for me. I can't pick. Yeah.
Yeah, super good. Very fun.
A good way to start the month.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk about what we're doing next.
I'm really excited about this.
I am too.
As we said, that we will cover, anything that was a literary source. And I was looking up all the listicles that are out there, the best mystery movies of all time. And this one kept showing up. It was Memento. And I remember thinking, I think that's based on a magazine article. And it is. So it's Christopher Nolan is the director. Guy Pearce is actor, is the lead. It's an amazing movie. You have to pay attention because what they're asking you is like really, you have to really focus. But it's based on a magazine article. And let me Christopher Nolan, 2001 Esquire magazine. And it's called Memento Mori, Mori. I will publish this link into our Facebook page, but y'all you can Google that and find it for yourselves. So
very exciting.
Easy peasy.
Still looking for suggestions for this month.
We are. And we try to keep it not too high of a page count, but maybe because we're doing magazine one this week, we might pick out something a little bit longer.
We might. Yeah.
We might.
Somebody makes a good suggestion kind of early in the week, we would consider it.
Yeah. Please reach out to us with your suggestions, all those places that I mentioned at the top of the show. And once again, our email is bookversusmoviepodcast@gmail.com. And Margot, where can they find you?
You can find me online at coloniabook.com, and all my social media callouts are at She's Nacho Mama. And where can they find you?
You could find me at Brooklyn Fit Chick. That is my site, and that's where I am for Instagram and Threads. And then I'm at Brooklyn Margot, where I have some clips from the movie on TikTok. And you can find me, Brooklyn Margot, on Twitter as well. Okay, everybody, stay safe on your trips out there. We'll be back soon with a new episode. Thank you so much for listening to the Book versus Movie podcast. We're a part of the Frolic Podcast Network. You could find more podcasts you will love at frolic.media/podcasts. You could find us on Twitter, Threads, Blue Sky, and Instagram at Book versus a Movie.